Hi, I'm John Lemons, the Minister to Young Adults here at FBC, and in this video I'll be joined by our ministry resident to Young Adults, Sam Maxwell. Now, if you are a fan of the Marvel movies, then you know that one of the things they are most known for is their Stan Lee cameos. Stan Lee is widely regarded as the creator of the vast majority of what is called the Marvel Universe, including such well-known characters as Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor, the Incredible Hulk, and Black Panther. So in each movie installation of what we call the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Stan Lee would make an appearance as a delivery driver, a pickup truck driver, a security guard, and more. But there was one appearance in particular that rocked the Marvel world. The 2019 movie Captain Marvel takes place in California in the 1990s, and in it we see Stan Lee's character on a subway train reading and reciting lines from a movie script. The reason this is significant is because the movie script he is reading is from an obscure 1990s film called Mallrats, a movie in which Stan Lee made another cameo appearance as himself, Stan Lee, which meant for Marvel fans watching Captain Marvel, the Stan Lee cameo wasn't simply a cameo, it was him playing himself. The creator of the Marvel Universe and the large majority of its characters had become a part of the universe. And Marvel fans who thought hard about this had their minds blown by the apparent paradox. One article asked the question that many were thinking: how could Stan Lee walk around in a world that is home to his own creations?
You know, John, in a similar vein to what you were just talking about, C.S. Lewis in his book, Surprised by Joy, alluded to a hypothetical encounter between Hamlet and Shakespeare, if Shakespeare were to write himself into one of his own plays, of course. He says if Shakespeare and Hamlet could ever meet, it must be Shakespeare's doing. Hamlet could initiate or do nothing to cause this. He would go on to say that Shakespeare could, in principle, make himself appear as the author within the play and write dialogue between Hamlet and himself. The Shakespeare within the play could at once be Shakespeare and one of Shakespeare's creatures. It would bear some analogy to the Incarnation. Lewis expounded on this idea a few years later when Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin came back from space and was quoted as having said, "I've been to space, but I have not seen God." Soon after, Life magazine reached out to Lewis and asked him to write a response to this, which resulted in the essay published called The Seeing Eye. The basic premise of the essay was this: one shouldn't expect to be able to look around space or Earth and see God any more than Hamlet or Lady Macbeth should expect to be able to look around their own worlds and see Shakespeare.
Or to go back to our earlier analogy, the creations of Stan Lee should not expect to actually encounter Stan Lee in their world, even though they are living in the world that he himself created, and they are a part of his creations. So if one had this seeing eye, then certainly they would be able to look around and figure that the world in which Hamlet lived, or Stan Lee's creations lived, was the creation of someone. And according to C.S. Lewis's terms, in Hamlet's world, Shakespeare was everywhere and nowhere at once, and the ability to see Shakespeare depended on if his characters chose to see him through his creations or not. But Hamlet and his companions would not know who the world was created by unless the creator wrote himself into the play. So despite living in a world created by Shakespeare and being characters created by Shakespeare, the only way that Hamlet could expect to encounter Shakespeare is if Shakespeare himself became one of his own creations, just like Stan Lee did. And whether Yuri Gagarin saw God or not in space, and whether we see God here on Earth or not, is besides the point. It depends on how we choose to see. That is, until God himself takes on the nature of his creation.
John, I think this is as good a time as any to come to our scripture passage for today. The Gospel of John gives two nods to this very notion. The first is seen in verse 10, where it says that Jesus was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. The second idea we have is conveyed in verse 14. It says, "The Word, who is Jesus, became flesh and made his dwelling among us." Now, each year at Christmas time, we read about the arrival of Jesus, and because it has become so intertwined and a part of our annual traditions, I think it sometimes fails to completely capture our imagination at just how remarkable such a claim is. That God, who created all of this and all of us, came to his creation in the person of Jesus. These examples that we have from the Marvel Universe and from C.S. Lewis and Shakespeare help us to see the mind-boggling nature of this whole idea. Perhaps you don't care much about Marvel Comics or Shakespeare, and that's okay. But the idea that God, who is creator of all, would come and live among his created is something at which we should, quite frankly, marvel.
And it is something about which the New Testament writers called good news. Jesus came, and he came not only to give us a better life, and not just to take us to heaven when we die, but he came so that we might know God, the God who created all of this, and who created all of us.
And this is definitely very excellent and good news, John.
Today, let us urge you to stop and contemplate just how remarkable is this event that we call Christmas. God, the Creator, became the created, and he made his dwelling among us. Thanks be to God.